Good evening and welcome everyone to Andalusia Reads the Declaration. This is the beginning of Andalusia's celebration of July 4th, and there are other activities, as you probably know, that are planned through the 4th of July. I want to call attention especially to the Daughters of the American Revolution. Not only are they providing refreshments tonight after the reading, but they are also in charge of the parade that will start, I believe, at First Baptist Church and then go all the way to the square. It begins at 10 o'clock on Friday the 4th. Be there or be square. Hope you can make it. There's quite a story behind the Declaration of Independence. It's more than July 4th. By the time the Second Continental Congress convened in May of 1776, tensions had risen greatly between the American colonies, some of which had already written and passed their own declarations of independence, and the mother country in Great Britain. Attempts at reconciliation were failing. On June the 2nd, June the 7th, 1776, Richard Henry Lee, a delegate from Virginia, proposed to the Second Continental Congress that these colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. And the proposal, of course, including ending all allegiance to Great Britain. The Continental Congress appointed a committee of 5 to write a Declaration of Independence. That committee consisted of Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Roger Sherman, Robert Livingston, and Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson, who was 33 years old at the time, was the unanimous choice of the committee to do the principal part of the writing, and he did that over the course of the next 3.5 or so weeks. Or maybe just 3 weeks. He did solicit some help from Adams and Franklin, and they made a few changes. On July 2nd, when it was known, I think, that the draft was just about finished, the draft of the Declaration, the Congress again took up Richard Henry Lee's resolution from the 7th of June. It had been tabled to that point and passed it. Only one colony, New York, held out, but the New York Assembly gave the go-ahead on July 9th. So Lee's resolution was voted on, it was passed, and immediately that day, on July 2nd, it was clear that independence was coming. John Adams wrote to Abigail, his wife, that this would be the day that would be celebrated for all time as the day of America's independence. Didn't turn out quite that way, but he was close. That day, and on the 3rd, and on the morning of the 4th, the Second Continental Congress, meeting as a committee of the whole, worked through the Declaration and made a number of editing changes. Jefferson was not, if you read his comments later, he was not ever entirely happy with those changes, but they made those changes. Late in the morning of the 4th, the Declaration was adopted, and that's why we celebrate July 4th. It was adopted with Congress's revisions. It was sent to a printer, John Dunlap, who was the Congress's printer. On the 5th of July, members of Congress began sending out copies, printed copies on not on parchment, but on a cheaper grade of paper, began sending out to committees and state assemblies and Continental Army commanders copies of the Declaration. On the 19th of the month, Congress ordered that the Declaration be engrossed onto parchment. On August the 2nd, most of it was 56 delegates, most of them signed the Declaration on that day. These were the men who were still in Philadelphia. It would be signed later by others. The last two signatures came first in November of that year, and then one as late as 1781. The Declaration is often called, rightly I think, our nation's birth certificate, our nation's charter, and as John Meacham, historian John Meacham really recently called it, our country's mission statement. Historian Thomas Ricks has written that this may well be the only document in the American experience that does all three of these things. It is a practical statement, albeit a bold one. It is a practical statement declaring the end of all allegiance to the government of Great Britain and the formation of a new nation. It is a theoretical statement declaring that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator. Well, you know the rest. You'll hear those words in just a moment. It's a theoretical statement also on where the power of government rests. It rests with the people, and it is in their power to change their government, even to create a new government. Okay, so it is a practical statement. It is a theoretical statement. It's also a literary document as well, a work of literature, and the words can be appreciated for their beauty. Thomas Jefferson, who was the main writer, said later that his aim was to express the American mind. I think he did a pretty good job of that, considering how well the Declaration has aged. Yes, there are details from the 18th century that some of them may not seem to apply today, but the underlying principles do still apply. And we see its influence notably in great speeches, some very great speeches like Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. Listen now to the words, the foundation of our country, not in ethnicity, but in an idea of equality and self-government. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America.
When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and the nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness.
Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments, long established, should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, Evinces designed to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government.
The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them.
He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only.
He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures.
He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people.
He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining, in the meantime, exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within.
He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands.
He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries.
He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance.
He has kept among us in time of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislator. He has affected to render military independence of and superior to their civil power.
He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving us assent to their acts of pretended legislation.
For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states.
For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us of many cases of the benefits of trial by jury.
For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies.
For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments.
For suspending our own legislators and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever.
He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people.
He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with the circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation.
He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands.
He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress. In the most humble terms, our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury.
A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people, nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us.
We have reminded them of the circumstances of our migration, immigration, and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence.
They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved.
And that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may right do.
and for the support of this declaration. With a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge each other to our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Let freedom ring.